The snow fell slowly from the dark sky. It was silent, soft, and endless. Every sound was gone. Just the wind whispered now and then, like a ghost. In the middle of the white land, under a broken tree, a small figure held something close. It was a mother, an alien woman, with purple skin and long silver hair now covered in frost. In her arms, a tiny child lay very still. The mother's arms were shaking, not from fear, from cold. Her clothes were thin and torn. Her body was weak, but she did not let go of the child, not even for a second. Her back was pressed against the tree trunk, trying to block the wind, but the cold still came. It cut through her skin like ice. The child gave a soft sound, a whimper, a breath. The mother looked down. "Hush, my baby," she whispered. Her voice was dry and broken. "I'm here. Mama's here." She tried to smile, but her lips were too cold. She leaned closer and sang softly, the words of an old lullaby from her homeworld. Her voice was weak, but the melody was gentle. The child closed their eyes. The mother kept singing even though her throat hurt, even though her body wanted to sleep and never wake again. She didn't care about herself. She only wanted her baby to feel safe, just once more. She looked up at the dark sky. Snowflakes fell on her eyelashes. She blinked them away slowly. "No one is coming," she whispered. "This world is dead. We are alone." But then, crunch, a sound. Her heart jumped. She froze. Crunch, crunch. Footsteps, heavy ones, slow, careful, coming closer. She held her child tighter, wrapping her body around them. She did not know if it was a beast, or worse, a human. They had always feared humans. Her people told stories of war, pain, destruction. Humans burned villages and took what they wanted. So she waited, breath held, heart pounding. The snow kept falling. The footsteps kept coming. Then a shadow appeared. A tall shape moving between the trees. It was getting closer. The mother wanted to run, but her legs would not move. Even if she tried, she would fall, and she could not risk her baby. The shape came into view. A man. Human. Tall, covered in a thick coat, face hidden under a hood. He looked around slowly, then saw her. Their eyes met. He did not speak. She did not move. The human stepped closer, but slowly. Not with anger, not with weapons. He looked down at the child in her arms. His eyes softened. He opened his coat and took something out. A thick blanket. Without a word, he knelt in front of her. The mother flinched, expecting pain, but he gently placed the blanket over the child, then over her. Warmth. Real warmth. Her lips trembled. Her throat tightened. She could not speak. The human looked at her for a moment, then sat down beside her in the snow, close, but not touching. He looked up at the falling snow, then at the child again. Still, he said nothing. But something had changed. She wasn't alone anymore. The snow was still silent, but in that silence, something new was born. Hope. The fire in the human's eyes was strange, warm, but unreadable. The alien mother didn't know what to think. She had always been told that humans were dangerous. They destroyed things. They took without asking. But this one, he had done the opposite. He gave. The thick blanket now wrapped around her, and her child was heavy with warmth. It was already melting the snow from her skin. Her baby stirred softly under it, still weak but alive. She looked at the human again. He wasn't moving, just sitting near her, knees bent, arms resting on them. His coat was open, his face half shown under the hood, brown eyes, unshaven jaw, tired face, but calm. "Why?" she finally asked, her voice almost gone. He turned to her, confused. "Why help us?" she asked again, slower. "You are human." He blinked, then with a gentle voice replied, "Because you needed help." She didn't know how to respond to that. Her people always said humans helped no one unless they wanted something. So, what did he want? "I have nothing," she whispered. "No money, no food, no name even." He shook his head slowly. "I don't want anything." Then silence again, not cold now, but full of questions. The child let out a tiny cough. Both adults turned their heads quickly. The mother touched her baby's cheek. It was still too cold. She needs heat, the mother said softly. Real fire. The man stood up. There's a cabin, not far. We'll go. Her eyes widened. I can't walk, she said. My legs, frozen. He didn't hesitate. He stepped forward and knelt beside her. Gently, he picked up the child in one arm and then reached for her. She pulled back in fear. I won't hurt you, he said. But if we stay, you both will die. She looked into his eyes. They held no lie. She nodded. He lifted her into his arms, slowly but with surprising strength. She gasped, her body weak, bones thin, but he was careful. Then, and without another word, he began walking. Through the snow. Step after step. Wind howled again, louder this time. It was as if the storm didn't like what was happening, as if it wanted her and her child to disappear quietly. But the man pushed forward, his arms strong, legs steady. The alien mother rested her head against his chest, too weak to stay alert. She listened to his heartbeat, steady, warm, alive. She had never felt a human heartbeat before. It was different from her kind, stronger, heavier, but somehow comforting. The child whimpered again. The human stopped and pulled the blanket tighter around them, then kept walking. Time passed slowly. Snow covered their trail. Then in the distance, she saw it. A shape. A small, half-broken wooden cabin standing among the dead trees. Smoke blackened its roof edges. But it was real. Shelter. The human reached the door and kicked it open gently. Inside was cold, but at least the wind could not reach them. He placed them both near a dusty stone hearth. Then, he started working, finding old wood, lighting fire with a tool from his pack. The flame came slowly, then stronger. Real fire. The child stirred again. Its tiny hand reached out toward the warmth, and the alien mother, whose heart had almost died in the snow, felt something deep inside her move. Not just her body, but her belief. Maybe, just maybe, not all humans were monsters. And this one? He was more than just a stranger. He was the reason she and her baby were still breathing. The fire cracked softly. Orange light danced across the cold cabin walls. For the first time in days, the alien mother felt something real. Heat. But the peace didn't last. The baby's breathing was fast, then slow, then shallow. Wait, the mother whispered, bending over her child. No, please. She touched the baby's face. It was pale, too still. The tiny chest moved only once every few seconds. The fire was warm, but maybe it had come too late. The human saw the panic on her face. What's wrong? He asked. She's slipping, the mother said, her voice cracking. She's going cold again. I think she's leaving me. The human knelt beside her, serious now. He pulled off his coat, unwrapped the child from the blanket, and placed her against his bare chest. What are you doing? The mother cried. Skin to skin, he said quickly. It's something humans do for newborns. It works. Trust me. He wrapped the blanket tightly around both himself and the baby, pressing the child gently to his chest. His body was warm, strong, like a living furnace. The alien mother stared. It was the most strange, most intimate thing she had ever seen a human do. Breathe, little one, the man whispered. Just breathe. Minutes passed. Long, quiet, painful minutes. Then, a twitch. The child's fingers moved slightly. Then again, the mother gasped. She's responding, she said. The human nodded. Still here, but she needs rest and warmth. Hours of it. The mother's eyes filled with tears, not cold ones, warm ones. She sat beside them, watching, her child curled into the human's chest like she belonged there. Why are you doing this? She asked quietly. The man looked at her but didn't answer right away. His expression was unreadable. Then he spoke softly. Because once, someone did the same for me. That surprised her. You needed saving, Hinoceo. It is long ago. On another frozen planet, I would have died, but a stranger helped. Now it's my turn. The fire grew stronger, the room filled with a faint smell of old wood smoke. She looked at the man, really looked at him now. Not just as a human, but as a person. Rough hands, scar on his cheek, but kind eyes, steady voice. What is your name? She asked. David, he replied. You? She hesitated, then whispered, Thera. Nice to meet you, Thera, he said. It was the first time in her life a human had said her name without hate. Thera's eyes dropped to the baby again. She reached forward, brushing a soft curl from the child's forehead. Her name is Omi, she said. David smiled. She's strong, like her mother. That made Thera's lips shake, not from cold, from emotion. She had thought this night would be her last. She had prepared for death. But now, there was a fire, a man, a name, a warmth not just on her skin, but in her heart, and her child was breathing again. That more than anything felt like a miracle. But Thera didn't know the danger wasn't gone. Because far out in the snow, something else was coming. And not everything that walks in silence comes to save. The fire burned steady now, casting long shadows across the cabin walls. It was small but alive, just like the child who lay curled against the human's chest. Thera sat close, watching both the fire and the man, David. A name she never thought she would trust. A species she never believed could be gentle, but here he was, holding her daughter like she mattered. Little Omi's breathing was more even now. The tightness in Thera's chest was still there, but it was no longer crushing. The human looked tired, his eyes heavy, but he didn't let go. Will you rest? Thera asked softly. I can't, he replied. She still needs body heat. If I stop now, she might fade again. Thera nodded, silent. She turned her gaze to the fire. The flames danced like spirits, alive, warm, dangerous if left alone. David noticed her staring. You've never seen fire up close before, have you? He asked. She shook her head slowly. My people. We lived in forest trees. We feared fire. It was wild. We were taught it only brings death. David picked up a small stick and gently fed it into the flames. It can destroy, yes, he said. But it can also save, like now. Thera stared at the flames a bit longer, then whispered, like you. He looked at her, surprised. Me. You came out of the storm. You brought warmth. My daughter lives because of you. I don't know if you're a dream or a ghost, but I'm still breathing because you appeared. David didn't know what to say. He looked back at the child, whose small hand now rested softly against his chest. She's strong, he said. You both are. Thera lowered her head. Not strong. Just too stubborn to die. There was silence for a moment. Then, crack. A sharp noise outside. Both of them froze. David's hand reached for the metal rod near the fire. Not a gun, but something close. He stood slowly, laying the baby gently beside Thera. She grabbed her daughter quickly, heart pounding. What was that? She whispered. David moved to the cabin window. Carefully he peeked through the wooden cracks. The wind howled outside, but the shadows in the snow were moving. I saw something, he said. Two figures, far off, but coming closer. Thera's face went pale. Hunters. David turned sharply. You're sure? She nodded. They chased us 3 nights ago. My partner stayed behind. He never returned. I ran with Omi. I thought I lost them in the storm. David tightened his grip on the rod. Then we have little time. He looked around the cabin. No locks, no weapons, no solid doors. It was shelter from the cold, not from enemies. He began pushing a table toward the door. Thera stood slowly, legs still weak. She joined him. Together, they blocked the entrance with everything they could. Broken chairs, stones, even firewood. "Will this stop them?" she asked. "No," David said, "but it'll slow them down." Then he paused, looked at her with sharp eyes. "If I tell you to run, take your daughter and go out the back. Don't argue." "I won't leave you," Thera said. "You have to," he replied. "She needs you more than I do." Thera looked down at her child, sleeping again, then back at the man who was ready to stand between them and death. The fire crackled behind them, shadows flickered, and outside, heavy footsteps grew louder. The cold wasn't the real danger now. The darkness had followed them here. The firelight flickered, but it couldn't touch the fear in Thera's eyes. David stood ready near the door, gripping a metal rod like a sword. The table and chairs pressed against the entrance didn't feel strong enough, not against hunters. Outside, the wind screamed, but beneath it another sound came, slow footsteps crunching over snow. 2 sets. "They're close," David whispered. Thera clutched Omi tightly. Her arms trembled, not from cold this time, but from memory. David glanced at her. "You said they chased you. Why? What do they want from you and your child?" Thera didn't answer. Her mouth opened, then closed again. Her eyes looked down at Omi. "Thera," David said more firmly, "if I'm going to protect you, I need to know the truth." She hesitated, then slowly nodded. "My people lived in the mountain forests," she began. "We stayed away from cities, from humans. But one day, men came. Not just soldiers, traders, with silver masks and dead eyes. They brought metal nets and loud machines." David frowned. "Slavers?" "Yes," she said, her voice shaking. "They didn't care who we were. They captured anyone they found. For markets." David's grip tightened. Thera continued, her voice now bitter. "I escaped with a group. We ran through the ice rivers, hid in caves. One by one they were taken. My mate. My brother." She stopped, swallowed hard. "Then it was just me. And Omi." David looked toward the blocked door. "And the ones outside?" "They're not traitors," Thera said. "They were my people once." David turned back, confused. "What do you mean?" "They made a deal," she said softly, "to survive. They help the slavers catch others, and in return, they are left free." David's face darkened. "Traitors." Thera nodded. "I refused. I said no. They said I'd regret it. And now, here we are." A sudden thud hit the door. Both of them jumped. David stood in front of Hera and Omi without thinking. "They know we're in here." Another bang, then a voice outside, low and sharp. "Thera, come out. Don't make this harder. You have something valuable." Thera's breath caught. Her eyes moved to her baby. "What do they mean?" David asked. Thera lowered her head. "Omi is different." "Different how?" "Half-blood," she said. "My mate was not my kind." David blinked. "Not alien?" Thera looked at him. "Not my species, but still alien to others." She continued, "Children like her are rare. Some call them mixed miracles. Others call them market gold. I ran before they could take her. She was just a baby then." David stared in silence. Then he stepped closer. "That's why they're here. Not for you, for her." Thera nodded, eyes full of fear. "They won't let her live free. They'll sell her, study her, use her." David dropped to one knee beside her. "Then we don't let them have her, or you." "But how?" she whispered. "There are 2 of them, maybe more. We have nothing but fire and old wood." David looked toward the cabin wall, his eyes locked on something, a rusty hatch in the floor. "Maybe," he said slowly, "we don't need to fight them head on." He reached for the hatch, pulling it open. A narrow tunnel led into darkness below. "Storage space," he said. "Old cabin builders used to dig escape paths in case of wild beasts." He looked at Thera. "Take Omi. Go through here. Wait at the other end. If they break in, I'll keep them busy." "No," she said. "They'll kill you." "Maybe," he said, eyes calm. "But they won't touch her." Another crash at the door. The wood cracked. David looked back. Go, Thera, now. And in that moment, she trusted him with everything, even her child's future. Thera held Omi close to her chest as she stepped down into the dark tunnel beneath the cabin. The floor creaked softly above her as David moved across it. The hatch closed behind her with a dull thud. Everything went dark. She crouched low, her heart racing, knees shaking. Omi whimpered against her chest, sensing the tension. It's all right, my love, Thera whispered. Mama's here. Just a little more. The narrow tunnel smelled of dirt and time. It curved slightly, leading toward a hidden exit that David had pointed out. Her feet slipped once on the frozen ground, but she kept going, every step driven by fear and hope. Above her, the cabin groaned again. Voices. We know you're in there, human, a hunter barked. Hand over the girl and we'll let you walk away. No answer. Thera's heart stopped. What was David doing? Would he really stay and face them alone? Another voice joined the first. This one crueler, colder. You're protecting a freak, human. Do you even know what she is? That child isn't yours. Still silence. Then, crash. The sound of wood shattering. Thera flinched and crouched lower. Omi gave a soft cry and Thera kissed her forehead. Shh, little one, just hold on. The tunnel ended in a broken stone wall. With effort, Thera pushed aside loose rocks and slipped out into a snow-covered thicket behind the cabin. From here, she could barely see the roof and hear faint echoes of movement inside, but what she saw next made her blood freeze. Footprints. Heavy ones, not just two men. There were more. 3, maybe 4. They were spread in a wide circle, tracking the cabin. A trap. No, she whispered. They didn't just follow, they surrounded us. She looked down at Omi. The child stared back with wide, tired eyes. I need to go back, Thera whispered. He doesn't know. She hesitated, torn. Every instinct screamed to run, to hide. But Dav, he was still inside, thinking there were only 2. A scream split the air, not hers. Inside the cabin, a hunter shouted, followed by a loud bang, then another. Thera's heart dropped. She pushed Omi beneath a thick bush, wrapping the child in the warm blanket David had given them. She kissed Omi's forehead. Don't move, she whispered. Please, just be still. Then Thera turned and ran. Snow grabbed at her legs, wind bit her face, but she didn't stop. She reached the cabin's side and crouched low, crawling up to a broken window. Inside, she saw chaos. David stood in the middle of the room, breathing hard, face bruised, lip bleeding. One hunter lay unconscious near the fire. Another backed away from him, weapon drawn. A third man entered through the back door. Behind you, Thera cried. David turned just in time. The man swung a steel rod. David blocked it barely. The impact knocked him sideways into a wall. Thera acted. She grabbed a chunk of ice-covered wood and burst through the cabin's side door. The third hunter turned, just as Thera swung. Crack! The wood smashed into his face. He dropped instantly. David stared at her. You came back? There's a fourth, she gasped. I saw tracks. David nodded, grabbing his weapon again. Then we finished this. A loud crunch behind them made them spin. The fourth hunter stood there, taller, armored, holding a strange electric whip. His eyes were locked on Thera. I knew you'd come back, he said with a grin. Mothers always do. David stepped between them. No one touches her, he growled. Snow swirled through the open door, and the final battle was just beginning. The cold wind rushed through the broken cabin walls, carrying snow into the room like ghostly fingers. David stood tall, breathing hard, the metal rod in his hand shaking slightly. In front of him, the fourth hunter smiled, a cruel, knowing grin. He cracked the electric whip once. Blue sparks lit up the dim room. Thera stayed behind David, clutching a small knife she had taken from one of the fallen hunters. Her arms were shaking, but her eyes were clear. You should have stayed hidden, the hunter said. But no, heroes always think they can change fate. David said nothing. He stepped forward slowly. The hunter raised the whip and snapped it toward him. Crack! David dodged barely. The whip tore through the air and hit the cabin wall, burning a deep black mark. "Go now," David shouted at Thera. "Run back to Omi." But Thera didn't move. "I won't leave you." The hunter swung again. David ducked and lunged forward, swinging the rod into the man's leg. A loud grunt followed, but the hunter didn't fall. Instead, he grabbed David by the collar and slammed him into a beam. David groaned, pain flashing across his face. Thera screamed. She ran forward and stabbed the knife into the hunter's side. Not deep, but enough to make him roar in pain. "You filthy traitor," the hunter shouted, backhanding her hard. She hit the ground, stunned. David saw her fall. Blood ran from her lip. Something inside him snapped. He stood, ignoring the pain, and grabbed a burning piece of wood from the fireplace. It flared in his hand like a sword of flame. "Stay away from her," he yelled. The hunter raised his whip again, but this time David threw the fire straight at his face. Whoosh! The flames licked across the hunter's hood. He screamed, falling back, dropping the whip. David didn't wait. He rushed forward, slamming his shoulder into the man's chest. Both crashed through the back door, out into the open snow. The storm had grown stronger. Wind howled like a beast. They rolled through the snow, fists flying. The hunter landed a hard punch on David's ribs. David kicked him off and grabbed the whip. With one swing, he wrapped it around the man's leg and pulled hard. The hunter dropped again. "I told you," David said, panting. "You're not taking them." He lifted the rod high, crack, and brought it down. The hunter lay still. David staggered to his feet, snow covering his coat, blood dripping from his nose. He limped back toward the cabin. Thera was there, trying to stand. Her cheek was bruised, but her eyes lit up when she saw him. "You won," she whispered. David collapsed to his knees. Barely. She helped him sit against the wall. "You didn't run," he said, voice weak. "You didn't either," she replied. For a long moment they sat in silence. Snow fell gently now, quieter than before. Then, a sound. A small voice, from the trees. "Mama?" Thera gasped. She stood and ran outside. There, peeking from behind a bush, was Omi, wrapped in the blanket. Safe. Thera fell to her knees, hugging her child tightly. David smiled faintly. They had survived. But he knew this wasn't over. Someone would come looking for the hunters. They couldn't stay here. But for now, in this moment, they were together, and they were free. The snowstorm had slowed, but the silence that followed was heavier than ever. The wind no longer screamed. It only whispered, low and cold. David sat near the broken doorway of the cabin, holding his ribs, each breath a sharp sting. The fire had burned low behind him. Blood marked the snow where the final hunter had fallen. Thera knelt in the white frost, arms wrapped around Omi. The child's face was pale, but her eyes were open now, blinking slowly, as if trying to understand what had happened. "You're safe now," Thera whispered, brushing a strand of silver hair from her daughter's forehead. "Mama's here. You did so well." Omi looked toward the cabin, toward the man with blood on his coat and pain in his eyes. Who is he?" she asked, voice small. Thera smiled, despite everything. "He's the reason we're still alive." Omi stared at David, then crawled slowly from her mother's lap toward him. David saw her coming and tried to straighten up. "Careful, little one. I might be more broken than I look." But Omi didn't speak. She crawled into his lap gently, resting her head against his chest. Then, she cried. Not from pain, not from fear, but from release. A deep, aching cry that broke the air. A sound held too long. Thera covered her mouth, tears rising again. David looked down at the child in his arms, his eyes soft. "That cry," he whispered, "that's the sound of someone who made it through the storm." He looked up at Thera. "She's stronger than anyone I've ever met." Thera came closer, sitting beside them. "She gets it from her father, and maybe from the human who refused to leave us behind." David chuckled, then winced. "Don't make me laugh. My ribs are probably cracked." Omi looked up, worried. Did I hurt you?" "No," David said gently. "You saved me." There was a long pause. Snowflakes drifted gently down. In that ruined shelter, A strange kind of peace settled, but it didn't last. A distant sound echoed across the hills. A buzz, mechanical, low, rhythmic. David's face hardened. A scout drone. Thera tensed. Slaver tech? Maybe, he said, standing slowly. Or maybe someone worse. Thera held Omi tighter. We need to leave. David looked at the cabin. Bloodstains, broken weapons, and shattered furniture. They couldn't stay here. Someone would find this place soon. Do you know the trails beyond the trees? He asked. Thera nodded. There's an old path that leads to the Black Ridge. Beyond that, empty caves, abandoned mining tunnels. David turned to her. Then we move before dark. He knelt beside Omi. Can you walk? She nodded, wiping her tears. If you hold my hand. David reached out. Deal. Together, they gathered what little they had, blankets, scraps of food, a piece of firewood still burning at one end. Before they left, David paused at the doorway and looked back once. The cabin was quiet again. The fire dead. He turned away. As they stepped into the snow, the wind picked up once more, but it didn't bite as hard this time. Ahead of them, the cold path stretched into shadows. Behind them, death and danger waited to return. But between them, David, Thera, and Omi, there was something stronger than the snow. Something no storm could break. Family. The sky slowly turned from black to pale blue as the first signs of morning touched the frozen land. Snow no longer fell. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world of silence, broken trees and white hills stretching far into the distance. David leaned against a rock, his breath slow and uneven. His coat was torn, his face was bruised, but he was alive. And beside him sat Thera. Her arm wrapped gently around Omi, who was finally asleep. They had walked through most of the night, using hidden paths behind the trees. Now they rested near a frozen stream at the base of the Black Ridge. The mining tunnels were just ahead. David looked at the sunrise. It wasn't warm, not really, but it felt like something had changed. I forgot how good light feels after a night like that, he said quietly. Thera looked at him. I forgot what hope feels like. They didn't speak for a moment, just breathed. Then David reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, round object, a silver tag, dirty and scratched. He handed it to her. This used to belong to someone who saved me a long time ago. Thera turned it over. There were faded letters, not human language, something else. I never knew what it said, he admitted, but I kept it. Thought maybe it meant something. Thera stared at the symbol, her eyes widened. This is from the old code, ancient words from the mountain people. David blinked. You understand it? She nodded slowly. It says, those who protect the weak carry the fire. David gave a tired smile. Guess it fits, huh? She looked at him, eyes soft. You didn't have to help us. You could have walked away. He shrugged. I could have, but something told me not to, and I'm glad I didn't. Then a small voice rose between them. I'm glad too, said Omi. She had woken up but didn't move. She simply lay across her mother's lap, blinking at the sunlight. Iksha, Thera kissed her forehead. We're almost safe, little one. David stood slowly, holding his side. Not just safe. We have a new start ahead. You said there were caves? Thera nodded. Old mining tunnels. The slavers don't go there. Too many paths, too many ghosts. David smiled. Perfect place for ghosts like us. They gathered what little they had. Thera carried Omi on her back, wrapped tight in blankets. David used a stick as a walking aid. Each step was slow, but sure. As they reached the mouth of the cave, David paused and looked back. The land behind them, once full of danger and darkness, now shimmered under the golden morning light. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like a man running from something. He felt like a man walking toward something. Maybe not a home, maybe not peace, but toward people who needed him, toward something that finally mattered. Ready? He asked. Thera smiled. Ready. Omi giggled softly. Let's go. And with that, the three of them entered the shadows of the cave. Behind them, the sun rose higher. In front of them, darkness, unknown paths, hidden dangers. But they weren't alone anymore. They had each other. And that was more powerful than any weapon. They carried the fire. The caves welcomed them with silence. No voices, no footsteps, just the slow drip of melting ice and the soft echo of their breathing. David led the way with a broken lantern he'd found near the cave entrance. Its light flickered weakly, barely enough to guide their steps. But it was light, and it was theirs. Thera followed closely, carrying Omi wrapped tight against her back. The child slept again, warm and safe for now. Her tiny hand peeked from the blanket, fingers curled as if dreaming of peace. They passed tunnels with old metal rails, cracked mining carts, and dust that had rested untouched for years. The air smelled of rust and stone. This place is forgotten, Thera said softly. Even the slavers fear getting lost in here. David chuckled quietly. Then it's the perfect place for people like us to begin again. They reached a wider chamber, once a worker's rest point, now just stone and shadow. David looked around, then dropped his bag. We'll stay here, he said, at least for a while. Thera set Omi down gently on a flat rock covered with furs. She sat beside her, rubbing her feet to keep the blood moving. David pulled out the last of their food, dried root bread, a water flask, and a small protein pack. It's not much, he said, handing her half, but it'll keep us going. Thera took it with a nod. You've already given us more than food. He looked up. What do you mean? She hesitated, then spoke. You gave me time I didn't think I had. You gave my daughter a chance. And more than that, you gave me something I'd lost a long time ago. David tilted his head. What? Faith in others, she said. Faith in humans. David looked down. Not many would say that about my kind. Thera smiled sadly. Not many humans would do what you did. He didn't answer, just stared at the glowing lantern for a moment, then softly said, You know, I never had a family. Lost my folks in a colony raid. Spent most of my life moving place to place. No roots, no reason to stay anywhere. He looked at her then, at Omi. But now, I don't want to leave. Thera's eyes glistened. You don't have to. A quiet passed between them, warm, still. Then Omi stirred and sat up slowly. She rubbed her eyes and looked around. Where are we? She asked. David smiled. Somewhere new. Are we safe now? Thera wrapped an arm around her. Yes, little one. This is our new home, for now. Omi looked at David and tilted her head. Are you staying too? David's voice caught for a moment. Then he nodded. If you'll let me. Omi smiled. You helped us. Mama says we never leave good people behind. David laughed softly. Then I guess I'm not going anywhere. They spent the rest of the day building a small camp inside the cave, using old crates, blankets, and scraps to make shelter. No alarms, no gunshots, no running, just a quiet rhythm, a slow breath, a chance. And that night, for the first time in what felt like forever, Thera sang. Not a final lullaby, not a song of sorrow, but a lullaby of life. Omi slept peacefully between them. David leaned back against the stone wall, eyes closed, listening. Tomorrow would bring danger, or maybe hope. But tonight, they were no longer strangers, no longer broken pieces. They were something new, a family born in the snow, but strong in the fire, and their new life had just begun.